todas estas cosas. La gente tan loco. No se ha mandado información de regarding en todos esos juegos.
Okay, Tedra, you're on.
All right, this is 10 million now. So if you can hear us on the Facebook Live.
Tedra, are you with us?
She asked to give her a couple of minutes because she was just finishing something up.
Okay, I couldn't hear her on this.
It was in the chat.
Okay. Have you tried to record, Stephanie?
Okay, so it's saying that it is recording. So hopefully it will let me grab it. If not, I might have to have you send over like a link to the file if I can't grab the recording at the end.
Okay.
So, but it says it is recording, so we'll see if I'll be able to grab it at the end.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. Hopefully you've received the agenda by email. If not directly from me, then forwarded from Ms. Yoakum on your team. It is our first bargaining of 2021. Woohoo! We do have some new team members. It's difficult to do a roll call, but you can obviously check in the people list to see who's joined us and who's new and who's returning. And welcome everybody who is back with us and new. I'm Laura McCabe, Coordinator for Labor Relations in Labor Relations Department in Human Resource Services with the district. And the agenda will just give us a little guideline. It also has future meeting dates for a lot of our joint committees with AFSCME and PEA. So look at that for your upcoming, I think they're all virtual right now, virtual meeting dates, sick leave bank, health plan negotiations coming up. And so we're starting the new year with a bang, filling the calendars. And then along with the agenda, there was a list of PEA's concerns that Ms. Yoakum emailed to the district staff on July 13th, I believe it was. So that will be another guideline for today's meeting. Can everyone hear me? Raise your hands, I guess. Thumbs up. All right. And we will run the meeting. If we could just raise our hands when we want to speak. I know we have a large group, so we'll just follow that standard protocol. Raise your hand if you would like to speak, and then
hold on, my speaker's
chat's a
muted.
little difficult to follow, but we can also use the chat as well. We'll just be patient with one another.
Can you hear me?
We hear you, yay.
Oh yeah, sorry about that.
We did the intro and
Oh good.
glad you're here. I believe we're all here. We've done the little intro.
Okay.
But we won't do roll call.
All right. I'll go on mute. Stephanie, you want to lead off and talk to us about what you need or what you're thinking so far?
Sure, and I'll since we're not going to do a roll call, I will say our existing bargaining team is intact, but we have added a few new people as we know people are going to start retiring off of our team in a couple of years. So we're training up some new team members. So we have Gina Kubaba is a sign language interpreter, so she's joining us.
Hi,
Jim Palmer is an elementary teacher at Scott Lake. Di Marie Nieves is a pre-K teacher at Sleepy Hill Elementary. And then Kat Nickel is a high school English teacher at Lake Region High School. I think, did I get everybody, guys? I think I did. All right. Oh, and Sarah Gant. Sarah Gant is a speech language pathologist at Eastside Elementary. So I think I've got everybody now.
Hi, everyone.
How are you guys? All right. So I know our side predominantly wanted to talk about reopening and issues around, surrounding bargaining with reopening today, since it is fast approaching. So we had sent you guys a list of issues with just general issues and issues that we need to talk about with campus learning and issues that we will need to talk about with Campus eSchool. And so Tedra and I had also talked last week or the week before. I guess it's the week before now.
Week before.
And so starting to go through some of the general issues that we needed to talk about. And so really, you know, as our team has started to meet weekly now, we've really come up against a wall with trying to write language for some of these protocols because we just keep going down these rabbit holes. You know, one issue presents 20 more issues, it feels like. And so we wanted it, you know, to be made known that we are advocating for a full distance learning open August 24th, because we just don't see how it's safe to reopen our physical schools at this point. And if you guys have any insight to protocols that you are putting into place or bringing to the table for us to talk about, you know, we welcome that conversation today. But our 4 points that we really wanted to bring to the table were, we wanted a threshold set up that Polk County Public Schools would not open brick and mortar buildings to all students until there was a 14-day trending rate of 5% infection rate or lower. We want employees hired as of April 2020 to remain employed through the 2021 school year unless they decide to resign or are terminated for just cause. If an employee or member of the immediate household is directed by a doctor or government entity to quarantine, the employee will utilize the emergency extended FMLA provided under the CARES Act. If that leave is exhausted, then the employee will be placed on paid administrative leave for the duration of the quarantine period if a remote work assignment is not feasible for that position. And then we are asking that if an employee decides to take an approved leave of absence due to COVID-19 for this school year, that the school board continues to pay the employee's health insurance contribution. And so we wanted to bring those points to start discussing these reopening conversations with you guys today to see where you land. This is kind of where we've landed because we really sat down and tried to write language for some of these issues, and we just kept hitting a wall. And so we wanted to see what you guys had thought about with our issues that we had brought up with you guys. I know, Tedra, you were looking at finding some answers to some of the questions that we had talked about 2 weeks ago. And so if you wanted to report back on if you found anything, like after talking with Mike about possibly covering employees who took a leave of absence this year under the healthcare plan, and then some of the other issues that we had discussed.
So yeah, I can start there. Actually, I just talked about it in another meeting. What we looked at is the cost of that overall. And so for each month we pay about $700 for every employee that is out. Well, that in terms of their health insurance, excuse me. And so if they're out on leave, we would continue to pay that $700 for their health insurance. The problem is, realistically, that comes if we, let's say, arguably have 15 to 20 people out. That's 15 to 20 people that we would be paying their health insurance for per month in terms of the $700 cost. And so remember, we are only given a set pot of money. And so just I need you all to make sure that you still want that in terms of the overall cost, because for every cost that we take from our general fund, you know, that means that we won't have the funds to realistically provide any more money or any raises or anything like that. And I know that we're going into a budget shortfall year. We're all anticipating it after the November elections, likely sometime in January. And so we just need to be mindful of that. With every cost that you all ask for, and with every cost that we do, it's going to affect our general bottom line and our general fund as a whole. So I just need us to think about that. But I did talk to Linda. Linda has reached out across her network of risk managers, and so she does not know of any other district that's doing that. I think she touched base with her predecessor, which is in Palm Beach, and they said that no, they are not doing it. I know that we talked to Orlando. They aren't doing it either. Osceola isn't doing it. So we can't find any other district that would be willing to do that at this point due to solely the cost of it. And that's the main factor, because, you know, we have the 80-20 and all that money. You know, I can't say all that money, but that money coming down, you know, that we're trying to figure out how to do raises based on that. And so then to now ask for another expenditure that we had not yet budgeted will substantially impact our funds. Is
Okay.
Mike on the call? Mike Perone?
I don't know if I
I
saw.
am sorry about
Oh.
that.
There he is.
Okay, good. Thank you. So we were talking about providing, PEA has proposed, or it has asked us to look into the cost of providing health insurance to those that are out on medical leave due to COVID. I had shared with her that Linda said it's about $700 per person, and that everything would come from the general fund, which we had not yet budgeted and or prepared to pay for this year. So do you want to say anything else about that?
No, that is correct. It's an unbudgeted. It'd be something that we have not funded in a year that we know we're going to have cuts. So I don't know how to cover that.
I see Marianne has her physical hand up. Marianne, on your taskbar, you should see your hand. You can raise it too, so that we can keep people.
Actually, there isn't one. That's why I raised my hand. There's activity chat, teams, assignments, calendar, and files. I don't see any way to raise my hand.
I don't know.
Yeah, I just don't see it.
Okay. All right. So regarding some of the other, did you have a question?
I did.
Go ahead. Okay.
So we've budgeted for everybody to have health insurance for the years, for all employees to have. So there is health insurance money budgeted. What is the cost of replace? So how do I say this? If a teacher or support staff person goes out on COVID leave, and I'm going to call it that for right now, so we're clear what we're talking about, goes out on COVID medical leave. We've budgeted for their health insurance. What is the cost of replacing that person per day? I guess what I'm trying to say is it an equal cost, or is there, in other words, if it costs $400, if it costs $600 and whatever dollars to do an employee, and it costs $300 to cover them with a substitute, there's a $300 piece. I'm wondering if there's any way we could come up with some formula which says that the district would, if somebody had to cover their own health insurance, that the district, they could do it at a prorated portion, I guess, maybe that makes sense.
I apologize again. I came in late. So what type of instance are we talking about? A person that is just unable to, or does not want to come back because
So if they took an approved leave under our contract right now, like a personal leave or a medical leave, but they're doing it because they do not want to come back because of COVID right now. So we were exploring the option of the district still picking up their health insurance if they are taking an approved contractual leave of absence due to COVID. And so that's what we were exploring.
Okay, so but the normal course of action in any other instance, they would pay COPE, correct? Okay. Well, yeah. I mean,
Mike, this is Sharitha Arrington and Stephanie. They wouldn't pay COBRA. They would pay the cost of that health insurance themselves by personal pay.
Yeah, that's the COBRA. That's what I'm talking about. They would pick up the cost. They would stay on our plan, but at their cost.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Laura, I see your hand up.
I just wanted to clarify, your personal leave is unpaid, and you're talking about initially covering the insurance during up to a 1-year personal leave or medical leave, plus the FMLAs, which are already covered. So
FMLA is already covered if they're under any kind of FMLA.
Any of those unpaid leaves in CBA, if it's COVID related, I just want to clarify what we're asking.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
So we were exploring if that was a possibility, what any additional cost would be you know, approximately to the district. And, you know, if we had to bring in subs, or if even that spot ended up going vacant for whatever reason, we just wanted to look at to see if that was an option, and we wanted to put it on the table.
Well, everything is an option, obviously, and everything can be negotiated. That is just unfunded. If we fill that position, then we're paying for another person's insurance and that person. So, I mean, you can make any proposal you want. It's just funding is going to be obviously a major issue here.
Okay.
I guess that's why I was asking for the cost of a daily sub for the district.
I believe that's roughly 100, 120 a day, isn't that, Tedra, about that?
That is correct.
Okay. So you guys have had a little bit of time to look over the issues that we sent to you guys too. And so were there any things that you guys wanted to bring or discussion points about the issues that we had sent? You know, because we got to start hammering out some of these protocols if we are in fact moving full steam ahead to open brick and mortar.
Stephanie,
schools.
can you repeat your list of, I guess, demands, for lack of a better term, so that Mike can hear them?
Proposals.
Can you repeat that so Mike can hear it fully and we're all on the same page?
Yes.
Since he's our money guy.
Yes. And so, Mike, to reiterate what I'd said when we first came in, we had really tried hard to, as a team, to try to write some language around some of these issues to bring to you guys today, but we just kept kind of hitting a wall. Because every issue we came across, we ended up having 20 other questions that needed answering. And so, you know, I think probably the best time served is going to be for both sides we have to do this together. Because if we're going to push papers across the table, it's going to take forever, and we don't have forever at this point. And so we had stated at the beginning of the meeting that PEA really doesn't feel that we are prepared as a district to open brick and mortar schools at this point. With the way the cases are increasing, resources and protocols in place that are enforceable to safely open our schools. And so we had 4 points that we brought to the table today as proposals. That Polk County Public Schools would not open brick and mortar buildings until to all students until there is a 14-day trending rate of 5% infection rate or lower. Employees hired as of April 2020 will remain employed with Polk County Public Schools for the 2020-2021 school year unless they decide to resign, retire, or are terminated for just cause. If an employee or a member of their immediate household is directed by a doctor or government entity to quarantine, the employee will utilize the emergency extended FMLA provided under the CARES Act. If that leave is exhausted, then the employee will be placed on paid administrative leave for the duration of the quarantine period if a remote work assignment is not feasible for that position. And then we've just talked about the covering the healthcare. That was the 4th point.
Oh, okay. So, if it's my understanding that if we don't, so basically your proposal is going against the order, correct?
Well, no, because we're supposed to be working with our local health departments anyway. And we have a reopening plan. I was on the task force, as were some of the bargaining team. And, you know, PEA was well represented on that task force, and we fully support the reopening plan. We understand that there has to be a brick and mortar option that's sent to Tallahassee, but we also know that locally, and Governor DeSantis and Richard Corcoran have walked this back to where they are putting it on local districts. So if it's not safe to open in our local area, according to them, we have flexibility. And so I think that we need to, as a district, looking at the numbers in Polk and looking that we can, I mean, we still don't have protocols that are in place for community and staff to look at fully and know that they're going to be kept safe at brick and mortar schools. And so I don't see a way forward to open brick and mortar at this point in the game. You know, we're too close to the date and we still don't have fleshed out protocols in place. We can't ask school-based administrators to do that job at each individual school site. It has to be district down. And so that's what we're proposing, that we have a threshold in place that until we meet that, we don't open our brick and mortar schools. We go to full e-learning. And so that would provide a 5-day-a-week learning option for our students. It would be structured. And so it doesn't go against the emergency order.
So I'll answer this just either way, whether we decide as a district or a group, or even if we are told that, hey, you're kind of like Palm Beach now or Broward or Miami-Dade, if we don't offer or do not have a brick and mortar option, our funding will not be what we're expecting our funding to be. We would be drastically cut without that. And then therefore we would have to, you would be having hundreds, if not thousands of folks not needing to work.
See, none of the guidance that we have gotten from our side has said that. We have a brick and mortar option in the reopening plan, which is what DOE is asking for. But we also have the local decision to pivot to our structured e-learning platform, whether they have chosen Polk Virtual, which is its own deal, or the structured 5-day-a-week e-school. So we would still be offering school that doesn't look like what it did in the fourth quarter. So our FTE funding should not be cut because we are still offering 5 days a week of structured instruction.
And as Stephanie said, the governor and Richard Corcoran have both walked back the threats on withholding funding. So, you know, somewhere along the line, the problem is that getting people to put things in writing is always an issue. But I would like to put something in the room if it's okay, not to digress, but just to put numbers in the room. The Florida Department of Health stated this morning that there's a 34% increase in children with COVID-19. On July 24th, 31,150 children have COVID. There's been a 23% increase in children hospitalized for COVID in the last 8 days. So this is the concern that we're dealing with is opening when it is safe to open, not having an e-learning option, but opening when it's safe, and certainly being able to have the flexibility to offer what is best for our children and our staff.
And so we don't believe FTE would be cut because we're still offering a structured 5 days a week quality education through eSchool. And we have the flexibility as a local district to work with our health department to make that decision. So
I'm smiling and I'm not being sarcastic, but when you say we don't believe that funding will be an issue, I need more than that. I need more.
All the guidance that we've gotten from our legal department, from FEA legal, and from our FEA policy department has not read the order that way. Our guidance has been that if we offer a 5-day-a-week school, whether it's a distance learning school or brick and mortar, our FTE should not be messed with. It should be intact.
So this is Tedra, by the way. All of our guidance, Stephanie, has essentially said the opposite. And I think that's what you see. That's why you see Mike's face with this hesitation. So everything that we've heard as recently as today has said, listen, if you don't have the brick and mortar option, your funding will be severely impacted. And so I think for me, that speaks to the number 2 on your list in terms of not laying off people, essentially, right? And so if our funding is cut, let's just play it out. From our perspective, if we don't go brick and mortar, then our funding is cut. And then if our funding is cut, then there's no way that we can maintain the staff that we have, right? And so that is that's just something that we have to think about. And I think that's what you see in terms of Mike's face, right? In terms of how we're thinking about it. So yeah, we just may need to agree to disagree, and maybe we can wait to see what happens and what comes out from the state. But I think, like Mary Ann said, they may have walked it back, but they've not put anything in writing, particularly to districts. And so it leaves us in a quandary, because we are given the task of going brick and mortar. We're doing everything. The local health department loved Dr. Jackson. She hasn't said, hey, don't go brick and mortar, right? So we're waiting on that as well. And I think we need to be very frank and honest with each other. We are trying to do what's best for staff. And so I know that Mary Ann had said that, and I agree with you, Mary Ann. I do. We all want to do what's best for staff, because not only are your staff members, but it's our staff members. They're our people. So God forbid if something adverse were to happen to one of our staff members, we as an organization would be devastated by that. And so we don't want to make any decisions that would put them in severe harm or in an adverse amount of harm. So we are all trying to figure it out together. But I just need to say openly and honestly, all of our advice has been very much contrary to what you're receiving as well.
So in your calls with the DOE, have they given you that guidance in writing, or is it just on calls? It's just kind of, they're saying that open or else. I mean, is that the feeling you're getting when you're on these DOE calls? Because we haven't seen on our side anything in writing like that.
Yeah, and I think you're not seeing it, we're not seeing it, but we're getting the sense that part of the whole reason brick and mortar was an option, let me back. Part of the reason they held FTE funding harmless was the fact that you were going to open with brick and mortar. It was contingent upon that. And if we don't have that, they are not going to fund. I mean, they're not going to fund 500 bus drivers to not drive a bus every day. They're not going to fund custodians to clean a school that there's nobody in. I can't see how they would, how we can't even pay them. Legally, you can't pay somebody for work not done.
Well, I guess
I
really would be curious to get that in writing from whoever you're talking to at the DOE, because that just hasn't been what we've heard. And if it's the DOE making their veiled threats, like we know that this DOE is likened to do, we really need to see that in writing so that we can address that. So if you're getting that guidance, then unless you don't open brick and mortar, they're going to cut our FTE funding. We need to know that and have that in writing.
I agree.
Because that has not been how our legal department has read that emergency order at all. And so if they're telling you another thing when you're on your calls with your counterparts or with the Department of Education, then we need to know that and have that in writing.
Right, but we're having the same disagreement and same argument and same how we're reading the salary schedule statute. You're reading it one way. Everyone in my area is reading it totally a different way. We
even got Wendy to say it meets the letter of the law if we're pivoting to salary. I mean, and I don't really feel we're not prepared to talk the categorical necessarily today. We really wanted to start hashing out reopening. But just on the record, we've had our legal team tear that categorical and that statute apart. And Wendy Dodge, our district's legislative lobbyist, had said that even what we're thinking meets the letter of the law. And so just because they may not be happy with how we have found a way to help people out, and they didn't want to help people out. When I say they, I'm talking about our lovely state legislature. Then, I mean, we shouldn't be penalized for finding a creative way to meet the letter of the law when they didn't necessarily want to help veteran teachers or non-classroom teachers or any of our support staff. And so if we found a workaround with that, and like Wendy says, and like our legal department says, it meets the letter of the law, then we would be remiss to explore that. And that way we can help as many people as we can with that. But I know our team really wanted to focus on reopening plans. And so with the assumption that we are moving full steam ahead with brick and mortar, we've got a lot of work to do in negotiating protocols and safety measures for how staff operate in our brick and mortar schools when we come back.
Hold on for 1 second. I just received a message that said you all are live streaming this on Facebook. So we were informed. I'm sorry.
Kevin said at the beginning of the meeting, it's a public meeting, so we wanted to find a way to make it open to the public like we would any other bargaining meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Then when I got on, I had already missed that, so I didn't hear that point.
Sorry. Yeah, we were just like any other bargaining session would be open to the public to come watch. We wanted to be able to provide that service since we were meeting virtually, so that people could watch the bargaining session just like they would if they were able to come. So sorry if you didn't hear that in the beginning part.
Stephanie, I've been on since the beginning and I didn't hear that either. I missed that.
Oh, I heard Kevin say it. I'm not sure.
But it is recorded, right?
Yeah, it is recorded too.
Did
I
anyone
also
else,
heard
I
it.
guess our team hear it? Because I don't think we heard it. It just seems kind of odd now.
Ms. Tara? Hello,
It was said at the beginning of the meeting.
Miss Stephanie?
Yes, ma'am.
I've been on since the beginning. I didn't hear him say it either. I heard him say, the last thing I heard him say was he was asking if you could hear him.
Oh, I heard Kevin say it. I don't know where the.
If you have it on, if it's being recorded and taped, then we have it that someone said something. It shouldn't be that difficult.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it shouldn't be an issue anyway. I mean, these bargaining sessions are open to the public anyway, according to sunshine laws. So, I mean, we just don't have a way for people to physically come and watch these right now.
Right. I don't think it is an issue. I think it's just a notice point. That's it. It's just.
Sorry, I heard Kevin say it, so I didn't understand. I didn't know that you guys or people that came on late didn't hear it. So I apologize for that.
Well, those that were on it early as well didn't hear it, but no worries. Go ahead.
Sorry. Okay. So I guess with you guys had your principals meeting last week. I know you guys have been thinking about protocols. So I guess I really want to hear from your side. We really want to hear from your side about what kind of some ideas, because we were really hitting walls trying to come up with things on our own. And so coming up with safety protocols, we really wanted to kind of talk through it with you guys. If we are opening our brick and mortar schools, we've got to really work on safety protocols and how we're going to enforce them and how it's going to be equitable across the district.
Specifically?
I mean, cleaning. We've got to have mask requirements in an MOU, I think, because that's changing. We're going to have a way to enforce it. I know that we have to talk about student contact minutes, because if we are holding buses in the afternoon, that affects teacher-student contact time. If they're going to have extra duties in the morning because of temperature checks, we've got to talk about who's being trained to temperature check. And I know that you've mentioned that not every student will be temperature checked, but we've got to have people trained to do that, whether they're teachers, paras, whoever is going to be doing that. We've got to talk about that. I know we have to talk about cafeteria and breakfast and lunch. You know, if we're gonna have to talk about duty-free lunch, I mean, that's gonna come with a cost. We're not gonna be looking to give teacher duty-free lunch up, or para duty-free lunch, you know, for grace and mercy, because people, that's 30 minutes where people need to eat and take a break. And so if they are going to be having to watch children during their duty free lunchtime, then they're either going to need to have, you know, whatever their lunchtime would normally be set aside later in the day so that they can eat lunch and have that break, or they're going to need to be compensated somehow. And so we had thought about, you know, activity pay cut in half is about $9 an hour. And so if you do $9 times for the 30 minutes or whatever that is, times 180 days, if we're thinking that far ahead throughout the whole year, you know, what's that going to cost? And so those are the things that we need to hammer out together as a group on
Okay,
what
so
this
do you
looks
have
like.
any proposals then? Do
Oh,
you have
well,
any?
So
Before-
again, I'm going to say, you know, we didn't have any like official language. We really thought that it was going to be best to, as a group, try to talk about these and come up with things together instead of pushing proposals back and forth, because we don't have a lot of time to be pushing proposals. And so in the issues that I had sent you guys in the middle of July, we did have some ideas. And so I figured it would be best to start, you know, you guys have had, you know, 2 weeks with this to talk about it as a group, to see if there was any ideas and thoughts that we wanted to add together as a group. And I don't think anybody on my team is opposed to writing language right now together. You know, we can pull it up and, you know, we can share our screen and try to hash out some of this together.
One of the things that that I think is also a pretty fundamental one for the discussion that our team had, Stephanie, it was the benchmarks for closing. How many kids create a, you know, what is the benchmark when we're going to say this class has had a COVID infection and we have to now quarantine the whole class, the teacher. You know, this section has to close, this school has to close. What are those benchmarks so that we know what the rules are?
So to Mary Ann, to answer your question, a lot of that is going to be driven by the Florida Department of Education and the guidance that we receive there. So obviously, completely with COVID, we don't operate in a silo. We really do it based off of the advice and guidance of, you know, our health experts, particularly right here in Polk. And so a lot of that closing, as I shared with Stephanie on the 13th or whenever that was that we met, a lot of that is dependent largely upon what our health department says. So it's not necessarily going to be based in building by building by building by building, or classroom by classroom by classroom, or section by section by section. It may be when the saturation, when the positivity rate, you know, reaches, let's say, 35%, or, you know, district wide or county wide, what that looks like. And so we're doing a lot of that in conjunction with our medical professionals and heeding their advice and guidance. So even with closing a building and or closing a classroom, a lot of those decisions will be made, again, in conjunction with the Department of Health in terms of what their advice will be. Not only that, we're also looking at talking to our own medical professionals, the same medical professionals that were on the task force that many of you attended. And so a lot of that will be discussed, though, overall with them in terms of what their overall belief is about us closing, and then going from there. Going back to something Stephanie said, in terms of the cleaning, we will clean our buildings thoroughly. Those will be cleaned at least once a day while students are there. And so they'll not only be cleaned, but sanitized. We have provided the hand sanitizers throughout the hallways for that as well. So there are sanitizing materials that every school has. that will assist our custodial staff in sanitizing and cleaning the classrooms on a daily basis. One of the things though, Stephanie, I think I shared it with principals, I know, and I think I talked to you about it on the 13th as well. Obviously with social distancing and trying to clean the classrooms and do that heavy lift that our custodial staff will be asked to do. One of the things that we're asking you is to make sure that teachers know that they get their extra materials or extra furniture out of the classrooms. So unfortunately this year we're asking that we don't have any reading corners because that would be hard to sanitize. So soft surfaces are exceedingly difficult for us to sanitize. And so just making sure that they don't have the pillows, the couches, those, again, reading corners. And then two, we need to maximize all of our space for social distancing. So having the students 6 feet apart in the classroom is that's going to pose a challenge for us. But we're going to have to be creative in the utilization and the maximization of space so that we can do that as well as meet, class size requirements. In addition to that, so in terms of student temperatures, let's start from the beginning. So we as a task force recommended that no temperatures will be taken at the bus stops. However, everyone will be required to wear a mask once they get on the bus. And there is a hand sanitizer station there. So from there, they are transported to school. Unfortunately, even though the task force recommended that we take all temperatures, it's just not feasible right now, particularly with us having 105,000 students. If those all come back, it would be monumental for us to try to take everyone's temperature, including our staff's temperature as well. So instead, we thought we would test 20% of the population at every school building. And the school administrators in charge of that. I don't know that we'll employ teachers, quite honestly, to do that, Stephanie. But it's
what
really
about support
administration. Staff? We may do some support staff. It depends on how many school administrators they have available, and then that will come from obviously that school building principal, because they know what supports they have and where they are, and then what their needs are as well. Because you may need, if you're thinking about ESP, particularly for your bargaining group, if you're thinking about ESP, they may need to stay in the front office to address parent issues and student questions and parent phone calls and or community phone calls. So I being a principal of a building may not want to take a ESP person to do temperature checks. So that may all be administrative staff, or even maybe some people on the leadership team that want more administrative experience. Nonetheless, all of them will be fully trained in terms of how to take temperatures. We'll provide an isolation room as well for those students and staff that test positive. Pause for 1 second. Let me go back to staff that are testing temperatures, that are not only taking temperatures, but taking students' temperatures, but we'll also have staff that will take other staff temperatures. And so we're asking for staff to do two things. The first would be self-isolate and self-monitor at home. So that means doing a temperature check at home and doing a list of like a symptom check at home. Hey, I'm not coughing, I'm not sneezing, I don't have a runny nose, I don't have diarrhea, I don't have any of the symptoms listed on the CDC's website that would mandate I need to stay home, nor do I have a fever, so I'm going to come to work. And once I come to work, we're trying to figure out if we can get some sort of Google form or maybe some sort of just something that says, hey, I am symptom free. I was symptom free when I left the house. And then have them just sign that or attest to that, and then go ahead and go in the building. Once they're in the building, they, again, 20% of our staff members will also get their temperatures checked as well. From there, we've not necessarily worked out the kinks in terms of, I know you asked about the lunches. So we've not necessarily worked out the kinks with the lunches. I think it will depend per building and per school. Obviously, elementary school sites are really different from secondary school sites. And so we may need to think about that and how that is going to work. School administrators were provided a school operations document. That document came from Mr. Hill. Each of them have one. and they go through, it's not quite a checklist, but it is a checklist in terms of what they need to do. And it allows them to think about those things. How are you going to organize your hallway so that it's one-way traffic? How are you going to do the flow of release? How are you going to allow students to come on campus? Where are they waiting now? Because many of our students were waiting in the hallways before, and now that, if they arrived on campus before the first bell, many of them were waiting in the hallways or in the gyms or in the cafeterias. So now that we can't do those, now we can't utilize those spaces, we may need to utilize other spaces. So the school operations guideline for our the school operations document for our principals has really, really been helpful in allowing them to develop protocols for their own building. I know that you said a lot of it has to come from the district. I think we agree certain protocols have to come from the district, but we know that our principals know their buildings, much like teachers know their students. And so we want to give them some flexibility in determining what's going to happen, because what works at Fort Meade High School may not work at Ridge, right? So because they're two very, very different campuses. And so what Mr. Ely knows about Ridge is something completely different than what Mrs. Hardy knows about Fort Meade. And so those are the basic things, I guess, that we're doing. Mm-hmm. If you want to talk more in detail about, or if you even want to come up with some proposals mm-hmm. about lunches, because our principals and administrators are asking the same thing. That was probably the first or second question last week from our principals. Hey, Tedra, what are we going to do about duty-free lunch? How do we do that? And so that's something that you and I and your bargaining team and my bargaining team need to work on.
Well, have you guys thought about any ideas? Because I mean, the only thing that we've really kind of kicked around is that teachers are going to have to probably get paid to give up their duty-free lunch to keep down the numbers in the cafeteria.
Well, not necessarily. I want you to be mindful, and I know that pay is at the top of everyone's mind. But remember, if we're going into, and I'm not trying to be an alarmist, I'm not trying to ring the bell, but if we're going into a budget year where, and I don't know if Mike is on, and maybe he can speak more to it, but if we're going into a budget year where our funds may be cut in between November and January, at what point are we going to say, I can't necessarily do that, but here's what I can do? And so it's not that we don't want to pay teachers more. If we had an unlimited pot of money, obviously we would pay our teachers more. But right now we are very concerned about what our budget will be, what we're facing. And so in order to try to keep as many people employed as possible, we can't necessarily justify giving any one bargaining unit any more than what we kind of have allocated. I don't know if I'm explaining that correctly, but
and I can completely empathize with that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I think our team empathizes with that. But I think that brings us back to our point.
But, and hold on for 1 second. And I don't want anybody to work for free. That's not what I'm asking.
Yeah.
I'm not asking for anybody to work for free. With the duty-free lunches, though, one of the things you asked what we thought about is really utilizing our bus drivers. So if we have an overabundance of bus drivers, because we know that not everyone is going back to brick and mortar, I may have some routes that are unfilled, and I may have some bus drivers that are unfilled. So what we're thinking about is using those people to assist with lunch, right? And so making sure that teachers have trying to at least look and see if teachers have their 30-minute lunch break, and then having bus drivers at least do it for now.
Okay. All right. So I guess let's go back to temperature checks. So with you guys are kind of thinking 20% of students are going to kind of be randomly selected for temperature checks every day, that might be feasible. And so those people that are going to be doing temperature checks will be trained during the pre-planning time back. And are they going to be given any kind of, and again, I say pay, we got to talk about it, but I think that when people are taking temperatures, they're putting themselves at a higher risk because they're coming into contact with more people than they normally may have in their regular day. Are we looking at maybe a stipend for those people that are temperature checking? Are we going to give them some other kind of time
Well, that
that
wouldn't really
could
be your
maybe
area
compensate
then.
them?
That wouldn't be your area. We're talking about administrators as of right now. So once we start talking about teachers and or your bargaining unit doing it, we can certainly have that conversation. But as
You
of
just
right now,
you
we're
just said
thinking
maybe support
administrators.
staff, so I just wanted to bring
No.
that up.
No, I was specifically talking about our own administrators, not PEA bargaining unit members.
Okay. I was just looking at the participants. Sandy, do you still have your hand up, and Laura still has her hand up, or is that from earlier?
Mine was from earlier.
Okay. All right. I wanted to make sure. I
have a question.
Okay, go ahead, Marianne.
So if somebody comes to work and they come in contact with COVID-19 at work and they get sick, is that workers' comp?
So based on what Linda has shared earlier, it could be. The problem is that the tracing of it would be very difficult back to work. And so, but I think based on what she shared earlier in another meeting, it could be technically workers' comp, but it would really be a bit stretch for us to prove that they got it from us rather than, let's say, Publix.
So would the Department of Health take over the contact tracing for our employees at that point?
Yeah, they would work with Audrey Kelly, who's a nurse at Mark Wilcox, to do the contact tracing. So, and I guess to Marianne's point, obviously, Marianne, we don't want to harm any of our employees at all. So if they did get something like that from us and we were able to prove it, we will obviously assist them. And I don't know if workers' comp would be the right solution, but we would obviously assist them so that it would be least harm to them. The least amount of harm to them. Sorry.
Thank you.
Tedra, do you have the numbers for the number of people who have responded to the surveys, both families and teachers? Because I'm really concerned about the size of our classrooms and the numbers of students who are going to be in them in order to socially distance appropriately.
Yeah, I like it, Brandon. But so it's not closed yet. It closes today at 5. I think the last numbers that I provided, Stephanie, let me look at my last email.
Well, and I think that they were just teachers looking at that data because it just had pulled virtual and e-learning. And so I think I was missing other support staff and non-classroom teachers. So I think I know when it closes, could you make sure that I get sent it by position? If it's possible to get it sent to me that way.
Yeah, so far I can just look at overall numbers, Brandon. I'm not able to sort it out right now, but earlier today we had 11,000 responses. And so that was pretty much a large part of our working, a large part of our employee base. We're right at 14,000. So to get 11,000 responses as of earlier today is really, really good. I want to say you're right, Stephanie. I only shared teachers with you. The way the programmers broke it down for me were teachers and then other. So what I'm trying to do after it closes today is break it down into specific position. And so I'll send you all of those positions that are in your bargaining unit. It may not be broken down specifically, meaning a behavior interventionist, right?
Fine.
Because that's a teacher.
Yeah.
But we'll try to make sure we get the big buckets. And I'm not sure if I can do it today. That's the other caveat, because it does close at 5 and the majority of our staff does leave at 5. So it may be sometime tomorrow. I try to get it to you though before the board meeting.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And
yeah,
I'm also,
go ahead, Brandon. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, no. I was just also wondering, so we're going to be disinfecting in these classrooms in these schools every day. In the past, most schools have struggled to even get like the minimal things done, soap replaced in bathrooms, floors swept, trash taken out. I'm wondering, are we hiring more people, and I understand that is outside of our purview, but it would help me to communicate that to other people in order to get our schools disinfected. And then I'm also wondering, so throughout the day, a high school math teacher, for example, is going to have over 150 kids go in and out of their rooms every day. Who is responsible for disinfecting that classroom throughout the day? Or are we just, and I'm not trying to be rude, but are we just going to ignore that and say once a day is enough?
Yeah, I don't think realistically we could do more than once a day, to be honest with you, just because of the flow of everything. I think it would be a great lift for us to try to get custodial staff in there twice, maybe on that teacher's break when they don't have anyone in there. That is an option. I'd have to work with facilities and AFSCME, that union, to make sure that they're okay with that. But I think we're kind of looking at all options. The other thing that we are providing are some disinfectant, in each classroom. So if at any time a teacher feels the need to disinfect, they can do that. That's period. In terms of the number, go ahead.
So we have centralized the purchasing of supplies. So Doug Dodson is taken over, and he's going to do that for all schools, because there has been that concern that not enough stuff or supplies were being purchased. So we have pulled back from the funding, and we're going to do that centrally. We are also talking about adding 2 hours to the custodial staff so that they can do deeper cleans, every day. But I'm with Tedra. I don't think you can. I don't know how you'd go in and do that through changing classes and midday cleaning, but there definitely will be a much more than in the past.
Thank you, both of you.
You're welcome.
So,
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, go ahead, DJ.
Going back to the intent to return, and that's the 11,000 is a great number from staff, but I think Stephanie shared with us last week that as of the 19th or 20th numbers that Tedra gave to her, that there were only like 17,000
Those were
parents
Michelle
had
Townley.
Responded. Michelle, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Michelle was giving me the student numbers.
Okay, 17,000 of 106 roughly 1,000 students. So I'm just wondering why our district didn't do like robocalls to remind parents, to get them to do that, because we even do it for like early release days to remind parents we're getting off, but we didn't.
No. Hey, DJ, this is Tedra.
Hi.
Hey, so we actually did robocalls as late as, I want to say, Thursday. I received a robocall maybe Thursday or Friday. I'm a parent as well. So,
Okay.
So we did receive we did do the robocalls. We've been doing them as often as we can. There's a balance there. You don't necessarily want people to start ignoring the robocalls, but you want them to be used, because you want them to be useful and actually, get the attention of the parents. So we've been doing it, I want to say once every 3 days or maybe once every 4 days, just to remind parents to make sure. Yeah, one was sent this past Friday. Thank you, Ty. I just see it in the meeting chat. So yeah, so we are doing them as often as we can, without trying to without trying to bother parents,
Okay.
So we
Thank
are
you. I just had not heard that they were being done. None of friends that have children in school told me that they've received them, whatever. And then just talking with my own department, a few people have been helping family out of state, and I had said something on a group text about the intent to return letter, and several of the staff members were like, I didn't know anything about it. So same thing with like staff were, if they're out and they're not working and they don't check their emails, I guess, how would they have known to do the intent to return?
Well, I think Miss Bird had shared with me at the end of last week that they had about 30,000 students, but that's still woefully under, the 106,000 students we have in the district. So I guess, the other point leading to that is that if 50,000 students still don't respond by today, it has been said that they will all move into the brick and mortar option by default. And so, I mean, we're going to have to talk about how employees, you know, maybe get prioritized into eSchool, and are we going to force an employee to go into a brick and mortar building that doesn't feel comfortable or can't, because of a medical condition, go into a brick and mortar building because the numbers aren't working out. So we've got to talk about that, I think, as well, and have a plan hammered out.
So one of the things, apparently we're up to 55,000 responses, which is much better. So we're trying to see if we can, you know, increase our responses. But right now we're at 55,000, so which is about half, and that's not bad compared to the 106 overall. So that's larger than the responses that we had for the devices earlier in the spring. So that's a really, really good sampling for now to address Deljean's question.
Okay, thank you both.
You're welcome.
And so I guess we really, you know, as we're, you know, talking about protocols and safety, you know, we want the mask requirement for staff to be in an agreement, an MOU, you know, or other safety protocols, so that we can hold building sites responsible for enforcing them. And that's been a real concern from members that we've heard from, even throughout the summer. You know, we've had to call some school sites to say, hey, you know, people are saying you're not wearing your mask, you know, please keep your mask on. And so Jim had a question in the chat. How is the district going to keep principals accountable in following health protocols? Because, you know, that's going to be an issue. And so that's why we want this language in an agreed to MOU, so that we can enforce it at the school sites with school-based admin.
I mean, I think it goes both ways. We're going to have school-based admin that don't want to wear it. We're going to have a lot of teachers that don't believe it's happening, right? And they are not going to want to wear it either. And so I don't want to just separate school-based or attack school-based admin. I think particularly to address Jim's question, there was a principal who mocked staff who wore masks in the fourth quarter of last year. I think a lot has changed since the fourth quarter of last year. There's a lot more research out. We know that masks help. Many of you, again, were on the task force. You all recommended masks across the board to both teachers and students and support staff, and administrative staff. And so we will definitely let them know. If you know of anyone that doesn't wear masks, just let us know, and then their boss will address it. I mean, I don't know that it's an issue that we need to spend a lot of time on, because it's a do it. You know, the expectation is that they do it, and it's the expectation is that if you're going to be on campus, you know, across the board, you wear a mask. And so that's an adult decision. And so we expect people to make decisions and, you know, make good decisions, and that means wearing a mask. So, and that's from everyone across the board. I'm not picking on any one person in particular or group of people in particular, but they know what their responsibilities are, much like your teachers know what their responsibilities are, your secretaries and your paras know what their responsibilities are. So we're all committing to wearing a mask by being on campus or in any one of the buildings. What will the discipline be? Lorinda is asking, what will the discipline be for not wearing a mask? Are you talking about for teachers or for students?
Lorinda, you unmute yourself. You can talk.
For both? I would say, I don't know if there's a discipline per se. I guess from the student perspective, we're looking at the student code of conduct. If I'm not mistaken, I think that's going to the board tomorrow. And so we're amending the student code of conduct to include masks for anyone in grades 2 through 12. And it's much like dress code violation, right? And so that's what we're liking it to. Again, I don't know that it's a disciplinary issue. I think, you know, adults have to make good decisions. And so you have to model the behavior that you want people that you want your students to follow. And so you can't say, hey, wear a mask, wear a mask, wear a mask. And then you have your mask on as a chin guard, you know, as the governor of New York illustrated. And so we have to be mindful of that. I think at a certain point, it could be insubordination if I'm going down that route. If I've told you as a building administrator, if I've told you, I'm going to pick on Stephanie, wear your mask, wear your mask, wear your mask, wear your mask. And, you know, after I don't even know what number of times, but after me saying that to you several times, maybe I'll send you an email and say, hey, Stephanie, I've noticed you've not wearing your mask again today. That's a problem. Please note, we're expecting students to wear masks. I expect you to model the behavior. And if you don't continue to wear your mask, then you know that disciplinary action would be forthcoming. And then we would just follow the collective bargaining agreement in terms of discipline. So that's it. I don't know, Stephanie, you have anything?
No, I think that we really, we all are in agreement that masks are required. We're asking our kids to wear them. We're asking anybody that's on campus. It's part of whatever agreement we end up signing. We wanted that in there so that we have some teeth behind it. And so I guess Laura had put up on the screen some of the issues that we had sent to you all. And so there are things that we wanted to talk about in campus, brick and mortar, but we also need to talk about and flesh out some things with eSchool. And so, yeah, thanks, Laura. And so I know in our instructional group in the reopening task force, we had discussed siloing. You know, if you are teaching eSchool, you will not have a mixed group as far as you won't have like kids in person and a virtual class at the same time. And so we wanted that, you know, that's a working condition. We need to come to an agreement somewhere on that. We are proposing that they're siloed. You know, if Stephanie's teaching an algebra eSchool class section, you know, she doesn't have physical kids in that class, that it's just eSchool, or if it's just in-face learning. And then we've got to talk about in the eSchool, how are walkthroughs and formals going to be done. I know that a principal can turn their key and come into your room at any time in the physical building, and they can do that in the same as a virtual building. And so how will they be notified once the principal gets into the room? Because I know if I'm physically in my classroom, I can see my principal walk in or my AP walk in. And so we've got to see how that looks through Schoology platforms to see if you get a notification so that you know your administrator is in the room. And for our eSchool teachers, just like our physical teachers and staff have to sign in and out so that we know they're on campus, how are they going to sign in and out in a virtual manner every day? And then, you know, they're following their structured class schedule, just like they would if they were in physical school. But I lost my place, sorry. And I know we had talked about maybe having an option of eSchool teachers having access to their classroom or somewhere on campus, like if they don't have reliable internet at their home, that they could use district resources, or if, you know, they have a smart board, you know, that they regularly have access to, they could have access to it, you know, for their eSchool. But what does that look like? Because we've got to protect those teachers, because if they chose eSchool, because either they have a medical condition or they are apprehensive about going back and being in contact with massive amounts of people in the public, we need to protect their physical selves, and they shouldn't be supervising children. They shouldn't be doing morning or afternoon duty, because technically they would be working at home. They're just using district resources because maybe they don't have those reliable things that they need to be successful at home. You know, they couldn't be pulled to sub, you know, if they're an eSchool teacher just happening to be on campus to use resources. They couldn't supervise. They wouldn't do morning or afternoon duties or anything like that. And so those are working conditions that we would need to And so, I mean, I guess this is kind of an informal proposal with the issues that we sent over. It's just not in an actual laid out MOU. And so, you know, we're proposing that if they were to be on campus, and I think that's a good option. If I don't have reliable internet at home, but I need to work from home because, you know, I have a medical condition, if there's an empty spot in the school, whether it be in the media center or somewhere where I can be by myself but still have access to internet to do my school and run my classes, I would want that as an option, not as a forced option. It would be voluntary, but then we got to protect those folks that maybe need that or want to do that. And then we've got to talk about live streaming, because I know in the CBA, we do not, you know, cameras are not for evaluation purposes, but we'll, I think, need to address that for eSchool people, because that would be the only way that they would be evaluated if they're teaching in eSchool is through that kind of platform. And so that's something that we would need to work out for eSchool teachers for the evaluation purposes.
Certainly.
Do you guys have any discussion or thoughts to share from your side about how maybe you're thinking this would work for eSchool teachers?
So specifically, we were thinking about we have talked about the structured schedule. Don't move it, Laura. Go back up. Sorry. We're talking about the evaluation and how formals and informals are done. And I would really imagine the same way in discussions with the academic side of the house. Realistically, when a teacher enters the classroom, when a principal enters the classroom, a teacher's classroom, yes, you know, they're there, you can hear them enter. So I'm assuming that they would announce probably in the meeting chat or in some form to the teacher once they enter that virtual classroom that they are there. In conversations with Mr. Williams from Polk Virtual, they do the same things that we do. So they don't have a separate rubric. They use the same platform. They use the same evaluation tool. And their teachers are evaluated much the same as our in-person teachers. So I'm not sure that we need to change that. I think we would just really reach over to Polk Virtual to see what his best practices are and train our principals on the practices that he currently uses. Obviously, just as long as they aren't violating the contract. And again, it would be helpful for us to use the same rubric, because just in case that teacher moves back and forth, right? So let's say they start out in eSchool, but then they go to live, and then let's say we get shut down, you know, again, and we have to go back to eSchool. So I would argue that we need to use the same rubric across the board. So it's not confusing for our principals. It's not confusing for our teachers. Everybody understands what measure they're being graded upon, and then they can perform accordingly. But so that's, I guess, the district's position on that. The second issue in terms of them entering the classroom is the same way. Mr. Williams does the same thing. So Darren kind of goes in, he looks, he observes the teachers, he interacts with them, he provides notes and feedback. When he's in the classroom, they can see based on their list of participants who's entered the classroom, and then they go from there. So I think it's working. I don't know that I would want to mess with something that's already working well. And we have a proven model. You know, that's the other thing. I can see if we did not have a model, but we do have a proven model with Polk Virtual. Structured, scheduled, adhered to. I'm sorry, I don't follow. What was the concern there?
So if they are, so that eSchool teachers would be following a structured schedule, just like physical brick and mortar teachers would. So if I'm at Lake Gibson High School and then eSchool model, I'm still following the same, you know, bell schedule as physical Lake Gibson High School's following, to provide that continuity. So that's what That's what that bullet point is saying. And then the other ones are if we allow e-school teachers to have an option of coming into physical schools to be isolated, you know, but just to use resources, we've got to have some protections in place for those people.
So I think we just got to be careful with that. Yes, I think there are some protections for them, but I also think you have to balance kind of what's going on as well. I personally think you're going to create a big dissension amongst your bargaining unit if you have teachers there on campus that don't have good internet at home. I get it, but they're on campus and they're not doing any of the duty, you know. So to me, that would seem like it would present a rub between those teachers that are there that are doing some of the duties. But that's kind of your issue to work out. But yeah, I mean, we could talk about that. We're more than happy to think about it and figure out what we can do in an MOU to address those concerns. But I think you have to balance both how many teachers are in the e-learning model and then how many students are in the e-learning model, because quite frankly, you may not have enough students that support a full-time teacher doing e-learning. And then, you know, I understand that they have a medical need to be there, but then what happens for the rest of their day? So now you may only be really looking at 10 students for their classrooms when, let's say, I'm just going to use DJ because she's on my screen. Let's say DJ has, you know, 25 people in her classroom. And so how is that fair? How is that equitable when Tedra, who only has 10, is making the same and doing the same, quote unquote, you know, we're both making 48.9, just using that as a round example, not that's DJ's salary, but we're both making the same amount, but only have 10 students and she has, you know, 35 because those teachers or those students didn't select that. So I think you just got to be fair. We got to look at some of those things logically. And so that is fair, as fair to all as we can. We can't necessarily overload one group of teachers with duties and responsibilities, i.e. those that are in the classroom that are coming face to face, than those that are just doing the e-virtual model. Although we understand that those that are doing the e-virtual model have some medical condition that would allow them to not necessarily interact as much with students as those that don't.
Well, and I guess in our instructional group, and I know Chris had posted a question in there, and I tried to answer it based on the instructional group. And is Michelle on the call? I didn't know if I saw her or not. But I know we had talked about in our instructional group that we'd have to know what the numbers are first, you know, after today. But if I only have 4 sections of algebra at Lake Gibson, but Winter Haven High School, you know, had 2 spare math classes that I could teach, maybe I would possibly, you know, we could make itinerant positions so that teachers had a full schedule. And I know, again, that takes a lot of work and creativity and thinking out of the box. But I think that's probably what we're going to have to look at too. And that was a possibility that we had brought up in the instructional group.
I'm not sure. Michelle, are you there?
I am. That is a concern that we have that we really need to delve into with the numbers. So ideally, we would have teachers at least by period in a pure setting. You know, if some of them are totally e-school or totally campus learning, that's one thing. Some may have to do a little bit of both, and that's why we have that flexibility also within the selections for staff, that if they're comfortable doing both, they might be some of those teachers that help us out with that. I think it also kind of gets to Ms. Utter's question about specialized teachers, gifted teachers, some of our strings teachers that might serve multiple schools. We're going to have to look at their schedules in a little bit different manner. So ideally, yes, we would try to keep the sections as pure as possible, but in a realistic setting, and we talked about this in the task force too, there are going to be singleton teachers. I've used my husband as an example multiple times. He's the only teacher that teaches his course at his school, and it's typically only offered 1 period. And those are the students and parents, quite frankly, that are going to demand that course be offered and taught. And so I think we're going to have scenarios where we're going to have to work out the details flexibility with live streaming is going to come into play in that regard. So I think as we know the numbers better, we can flesh that out. We could potentially share teachers amongst campuses to make it work. And we have precedents for that. We've had some different courses that have been offered at one high school and then live streamed to another. So we know it can be done. It's just a matter of getting the numbers and getting down to the granular level where we're scheduling it and making it happen.
Marion, you have your hand up?
No, I typed it in the chat box. I'm just curious to know what happens with paras who ask for remote assignments when we're not sure how we're dealing with teachers. How are we dealing with support staff? Is there going to be potential remote assignments for them? Did I get lost?
No.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I think we're working on that, but it again kind of depends on their assignment and how and what the student need is. We had some discussion last week about wrapping our heads around what if you're a student specific paraprofessional and you're requesting to stay a work from home assignment, but your student is coming face to face. So I think as we find out who's coming, who, needs a different work location, then we have to work out those details. But that could impact, there are some things we're looking at that for paras to potentially do remotely, but there are also many parts of their tasks that are most effectively done in a face-to-face setting.
So what are your thoughts from the district side? I mean, I've tried to look at student numbers and staff numbers as being codependent, but the more and more I think about it, it seems like parent choice and student choice is really kind of overtaking what staff choice is looking like. And so it's more turning into staff choice is dependent on what students want instead of them being codependent upon each other. I mean, are we going to get into the situation where we're going to have to start telling people you have to go back to brick and mortar because the numbers are there, or you might, have to take a leave of absence, or I mean, are we gonna get into that? I mean, I guess maybe this is premature because we've got to see the numbers, but something to think about for the next time we meet. Because it seems more and more, as I've talked with some board members and some of you guys, that it seems like students and parents are driving the train, and we've just kind of got to be along for the ride. And so our choices are dependent upon what students are wanting instead of them being codependent upon each other. And so maybe not something to hash out today, because we don't have the numbers, but I think it's something that we need to think about for the next time we meet on the 10th.
Well, I have one more thing. So we already know that a lot of classrooms are overcrowded, that they're more than class size amendment crowded. And so the question I have is if we know that there's already usually not enough people we don't have a contingent of teachers hanging out, to say that there's a pool of extra teachers around to be able to decrease the class sizes necessarily. How are we going to do that? How are we going to have, just take 6 foot for the measure, how are we going to have enough staff to have kids socially distanced?
I'm not sure that I understand your question, Marianne, but let me try to answer it. So having your staff socially distanced, or having your students socially distanced, particularly in the classroom, don't increase the amount of students. Your number of students still remain the same. So let's say it's just 25. And so if it's 25, it's 25. It's 25 that's 6 feet apart rather than 25 that's 18 inches apart, right? Or
Well,
back
the
to
con-
desk.
I think the
Have you been in these classrooms?
Yeah,
I think
have.
the concern is the physical, and forgive me for not being clear, Tedra. So
Yeah, no worries.
for the number of students and the physical size of the classroom. Physically distancing is not possible in a lot of classrooms in the county for the number of students that are put in that class that would typically come to. If this were a normal situation, 30 kids show up, not a problem. Well, it's a problem, but you know what I'm saying, Tedra.
Yeah.
But now those same classrooms, small classrooms, same 30 kids show up, there's not 6 feet of space.
Oh, correct.
That's what I'm talking about.
So,
and it's not like we could say, well, we'll just put this, lop off 10 and put them over here, or you know what I mean? We don't have extra teachers. And in some schools, we don't have extra classrooms.
Right. So in terms of how to social distance in a classroom and or just out and about, we may have to, spread out. If we may have room to spread out, particularly if our e-school numbers are higher. So I know that Stephanie just said they're codependent, and I agree they are. But I think a lot of what we do obviously is driven by our customer, quite honestly, and our customer would be our teachers. I'm sorry, our students. And so in that case, we can spread out as much as we practically can. And then from there, we may have to combine some classes. I mean, that may just be a possibility. And so, no, we don't necessarily have an overabundance of teachers, but as of right now, we are lower than we have been historically in terms of our numbers and in terms of our vacancies. So we are trying to do it as best as possible. And Marianne, I'm going to be very frank with you. We don't have all the answers, right? We don't. We're trying to work with you all. We're trying to work with the health officials. We're trying to work with the health department. We've been really thrown into this situation, much like you all have. And so it's not, I'm not trying to pick a battle with you or fight a battle with you. That's just something we're just going to have to work out and kind of, see how it goes and look into the classrooms. As Brandon said, have I been into the classrooms? Yes, Brandon. But the point is that we still need to socially distance. And so it may not be 25 people in a building, or I'm sorry, in a classroom. We may only be able to get 20 people in the classroom, so we're just going to have to look at it and see. And then, yes, we will have to separate those because it is imperative that they socially distance. If we've not heard anything else, it's that social distancing works. And that the masks work. So we must social distance and we must wear masks.
And so yes, it does. And this isn't, again, we have all been thrown into this mess by the DOE's demand for face-to-face 5 days a week, which is why we think that there needs to be looking at the law to live by the letter and not the law to the ridiculous extent that taking it, as we think it is, becomes an issue because we're being placed in an untenable situation. Not just us, obviously, you guys are trying to figure this out as well. It is why FEA has filed a lawsuit, and it is why people are pushing back. And we would like to see at some point if you will join with us on these things, because I truly do not believe that anybody in that district office really wants to put people in harm's way. Nobody wants to start going to funerals. And I believe that. But we've got a big problem on our hands and very little time to solve it.
Agreed. We're trying our best, Marianne. Anything else?
No, I mean, and I don't think anybody on here is we're all trying the best we can right now, and like Marianne said, I truly believe that. I really think we're all trying our best with the situation we've been handed. And we're fighting back in the manners that we can fight back. But we really need some help on the front lines there. And I know that you guys are trying to do what you can. So, you know, as you guys are talking with the DOE and whatnot, if you are being given directives that like you must open face-to-face or else types of directives where we think the emergency order is not saying that, because Governor DeSantis keeps repeating it's a local decision, but if he's saying behind everybody's back that it's not, that he's demanding a face-to-face open, you know, we need to know that, and you guys, if you can, get it in writing so that we have something to fight back with. And so I guess moving forward for August 10th, do we want to take these issues and start trying to formally develop MOUs or language that we can agree upon so that we have something to present, maybe from this list or something else as we move forward to August 10th, which is our next date?
Yeah, I guess it really depends on you all. So I definitely don't mind doing that. If you want to, we can go ahead and if you want to start shooting us some language, some possibilities, and then go from there. And, you know, we acknowledge that this is going to be a change of working condition for everyone, for everybody involved, and so including us. And so it's going to require something a bit different. So if you want to draft an MOU and just shoot it to us, and then that way we can go from there, or if you want to, I guess, wait until the 10th to do it, then it's up to you.
We can definitely get something together, and then maybe we, instead of, you know, normally we'll both do proposals and do them across the table. Maybe we put it up and try to workshop it together. And so if you guys want to, you know, add anything or have any comments on this document, send it over to us so that we can look at that too, as we look to start putting something more formal together. And then maybe on the 10th, we both sides just workshop it.
Okay, that works for us.
Okay.
Just so everybody on the call is aware, there is some breaking news out of Orlando that they will now be opening all schools virtually on August 10th.
Good to know.
That's
Just
Orange County?
Breaking as of 4:41 today.
I appreciate their courage.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
All right, y'all have a good one. Take care.
Oh, wait.
I have a couple questions.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, DJ.
I put in chat, but wondered, one comment when Tedra said grades 2 through 12 will be changed in the code of conduct of Mass, just to make sure to include like the ESC transition, because they're really graduated already.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with the ESC population and with those special populations, that is going to be required, or they are going to have an exception, excuse me. So with those populations, they will be, okay. I don't know if we could do transition because the code only applies to K-12, but they will have some medical exceptions to the mask wearing. So obviously our ESC students are students that are medically fragile, etc. You know, that would be solely up to the parent in terms of them wearing a mask. So we're not trying to do a blanket across the board, particularly for our really, really high needs and special needs students. That would not be right. Those with autism, those that have sensory issues, etc. So we would be mindful of that.
So are we looking for a better class or more medical type PPE for people working with those students?
We did order face shields, Marianne, for everyone. We ordered the masks for everyone. I think if you have, and maybe if Perone is on, he can opine to this, but specifically with special populations, so our Gene Odells, our Karen Siegels, I think they have higher buying power. And so they may be able to order some special PPE for those employees that will be working with our medically fragile students if they choose to come back to school, to brick and mortar.
They cough, sneeze, and spit without being able to cover their mouth, so we need to be looking at gowns. Face
I
shields
think
are good along with masks, but we need,
Right.
because if I'm feeding somebody and they cough all over me with food, I don't want to have to remain in my street clothes with that all over me. And there's no way for us to take a shower should that happen, obviously.
Right.
So just putting it out there.
So I'll make sure to get with Mike and get with, I think Rob is doing a lot of the ordering, so I'll make sure to get with Mike and Rob about those two things. Thank you.
And we need to
And-
make
and-
sure too about the PPE for the traveling ESP support.
Right,
I
so
think-
all staff will receive a face mask and a face shield.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I'm sorry, this is Althea. I didn't
Hey,
tell you who
Althea,
it
how
was.
you doing?
I would like to
s-
suggest to both teams too, that for our next meeting, we consider meeting in a classroom in one of our Polk schools. We are talking about reopening our schools. We are not meeting face to face. I think that's something that, in order to have a little bit of credibility, we need to put serious consideration into.
We can use the PEA building if you guys want.
I would even prefer a traditional classroom so that we can see how it is spaced out appropriately. Just got real quiet.
Yeah, it did. I don't.
Well, this is DJ. I mean, Brandon, I understand your idea and what's behind it. And I think that it's a very good point. And I think that's what we've said among other people and ourselves, is that if our board can't even meet face to face, but yet we're supposed to meet with our classrooms, you know, in a couple weeks, I get it. But I, for one, have asked to do e-learning, distance, whatever, because I have my 92-year-old mother living with me. And as I've spoken to several of you already about this, you know, I have done everything possible that's been given by the CDC guidelines since we closed in March. And now I feel very torn about going back to brick and mortar when I've done so much for these 4 or 5 months. And, you know, anyway, so I understand that, Brendan, but I personally don't want to. But I understand, and it's a good point, but I think it's valid that, you know, why can't we be doing that? Why shouldn't we, when we expect students and staff members to be doing that come August 24th? And second thing I just wanted to ask is, who should be filling out the ADA forms?
So hold on, DJ, to address Brandon. Brandon, I don't think, I think there are a few people that would not want to do it, but I would say a large part of my bargaining team would want to do it. The large part of my bargaining team are already in schools, so it would be a non-issue for them. It's only the majority of us, or some of us here, that are in district office. But yeah, we don't mind. So you set it up. We can actually go to Bartow Elementary or Bartow Middle right here. Chris is on the call, so Chris, get a room ready and we can go from there. That's number one. Number two, Deljean, you need to, who should be completing the form? If you're medically fragile, that's what we're asking, or if you have any one of the comorbidities listed on the CDC guidelines, go ahead and complete the form. And the reason why we're asking you to do it is because we're trying to do it as an accommodation. So, meaning you get your preference of being virtual based on your medical underlying condition. You cannot be exposed to it, or for whatever reason. In your case, it would be your mom's physician would fill it out for you, and then we would go from there. So
Oh,
I
okay.
just
So,
had-
so clarification with that, because that we had people that had household numbers that were wanting to fill it out, and we were given another direction. So if you have an immediate household number, that person's doctor would fill it out and therefore giving you that accommodation because you're in their household.
Well, they
Correct?
would have to say that you need the accommodation. So that, I mean, that's the point. I'm not sure that they would, but that's who you would go to, because we wouldn't be able to say
Okay.
based on Deljean that she would automatically need it. So,
Okay. Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you all.
Okay, well, we'll work on our end. If you guys think of anything you need to
Hang
add.
on one quick second.
Yes.
And this is my last thing, but Orange County, Palm Beach County, Miami Beach, Palm Beach County, all of these counties come under the same mandate. All of them need money to open and operate. So obviously there's some difference in how they're viewing the mandate than how we're viewing the mandate. So maybe we need to do a little research into that, since they've just voted to go full e-learning.
okay, I'll make sure Mike, I don't think he's still on, but I'll make sure he knows.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Thank you all.
All right, y'all have a good one. Take care.
Thank you
Thanks.
too. Mask up.
Bye.